By the end of this video, Razer is going to hate me, as if they don't already. Because we're going to be talking about 3 budget Razer Viper gaming mice alternatives that I really like, with the last 2 in particular really taking my attention away. Now this is the first alternative, and I can't lie, of the 3, it's the weakest. This is the Project Gaming Sleeper, and it's the furthest from the Razer Viper shape out of all 3 of them. It's more like Glorious Model O. This thing feels like the Viper V2 Pro, but narrower in the front, and it has holes, it's 53 to 55 grams, and it's an okay, interesting gaming mouse. And its SRP of 50 USD, because this is a €2 mouse, I don't think it's worth it. But you can often see this going on promo on Project Gaming website for quite a bit cheaper, and that's the case. This might be an interesting pickup. It only has a 3370 sensor, but it does weigh 53 grams. It doesn't have Nordic MCU, and it doesn't have support for 4000 Hz polling rate because of its sensor and MCU. But performance is reasonably adequate enough for a budget gamer to get their game going. Especially if you're just playing single player titles or you're playing more casual games and you're not really trying to compete. This mouse, if you can get it at a cheap discount, is pretty interesting. One thing I have to applaud Project Gaming for though is that the clicks on here are amazing. They have no pre-travel, no post-travel, and they feel really good. Though some might find them a little bit stiff, they have very consistent click tensioning throughout. The scroll wheel is a TTC Gold encoder, which is alright. I mean, I find the thing a little bit mushy, but most people will find it okay. The thumb buttons are decent, but they have a little bit of wobble and looseness to them, and I'm not the biggest fan of them. And the build quality is alright despite the holes. There's a little bit of creaking in my unit. The coating isn't amazing, but it has so many holes that gripping onto this mouse isn't very difficult, so you don't really need to use grip tape. And all in all, for $50 US, this mouse is something that I wouldn't buy, but it's a mouse that I would buy if it was like $20 US, which it can be found for on certain sites. A decent first try at a wireless gaming mouse, but Project Gaming haven't followed up with anything new since then, so I have no idea. Next up on the options is the Deluxe AM800 Ultra. This thing is a classic Razer Viper alternative because for the entire existence of the M800, it has been a Razer Viper clone dedicated to cloning the Razer shape, making it a little bit different so they don't get sued, and then charging a significantly lower price for a very similar product. And the M800 Ultra, in my opinion, is the best ever iteration of the Deluxe M800. One that I think has personally overtook the Viper that it was meant to compete with. Now, the M800 Ultra is released quite a while ago, so don't get it twisted. This thing is not meant to compete with the new Viper V3 Pro, but rather the older Viper V2 Pro, which was what was new when it came out. I'm sorry, Deluxe, I took a while to make this video, but life got in the way. But I'm making it now, and I'd just like to say the Deluxe M800 Ultra is really good. This thing is only $40 US, whereas the V2 Pro, when brand new, was $150 US, and well, right now it's going for $120 US, depending on where you find it. But the thing is, in terms of specs, the M800 Ultra goes band for band with the Viper V2 Pro. This thing has a 3395 sensor, has support for up to 4000 Hz polling rate, has optical switches, weighs only 55 grams, has a coating that's even better than the V2 Pro, more similar to the V3 Pro, not quite as good, but, and in my opinion, the shape of this thing, the M800, has been changed in such a way that is an improvement on the Viper V2 Pro. So if you're someone who liked the V2 Pro, doesn't like the new V3 Pro, and wants something that's new, doesn't want to spend that much money, because who does? The M800 Ultra looks really interesting. So how did this shape change? The shape compared to the Razer Viper V2 Pro is a little bit more narrower in its pinch point, but also, more importantly, it has a slightly lower click height because the hump has been moved ever so slightly rearwards and has a bit more body and puff added to the hump. So it does create a kind of in-between shape. If you like the Viper V2 Pro, but thought that you wanted more palm support and a lower price tag, but you didn't like the Viper V3 Pro because it was too big or puffy for you, M800 Ultra might just be the perfect shape. As for size recommendations, I recommend this mouse for hands about 17.5 to 19.5 centimeters for claw grip, and for 18 centimeters and longer hands for fingertip grip. You can palm grip the M800 Ultra, but just like most Vipers, I really won't strongly recommend it. Build quality is also pretty solid. wallet, I would have to argue that it's almost as good, if not as good as my Razer Viper V2 Pro. And the clicks are also pretty decent as well. I don't think they're quite as good as the V2 or the V3 Pros, but they feel really quite nice. They're crisp optical switches. They do have a little bit of looseness and sideways place to them, but there's no real noticeable pre or post travel, which is the most important part. Anyways, this is an excellent value for money gaming mouse at $40 US, especially for fans who are fans of the older Viper shape rather than the newer Viper shape and don't want to pay an exorbitant amount of money for what is essentially a 3-year-old gaming mouse at this point in the Viper V2 Pro. So yeah, M800 Ultra, I'm giving this a solid 8 to 8.5 out of 10. Next up, we have the Viper V3 Pro clone, because we just did a V2 Pro clone. This is the RORM SH01 Pro, and it's not exactly a Viper V3 Pro clone, it's more like a Viper V3 Pro Mini. This thing, when you put side by side with the Viper V3 Pro, looks very similar and in the hand feels similar except smaller. The main difference is shape-wise between this and the Viper V3 Pro is that the hump is a little bit more centered than the Viper V3 Pro, which definitely has a more rearwards leaning hump. It's more towards the back. Both have a very similar claw grip friendly shape with, low click height and grooves on the side and a pair of hips that are from Shakira that are nice and wide, but it is a much smaller mouse. So if you thought the V3 Pro was too big for your wallet and too big for your hands, the SH01 Pro from RORM might seem like a pretty interesting option, especially because this thing costs only $60 US and 68 if you get an included 8,000 Hz polling rate dongle, which is a lot cheaper than the 150 USD Razer Viper V3 Pro. As for actual comfort in real world use, I find it really quite enjoyable, though definitely too small for my 19.5 cm hands to claw grip. The hump is nice and puffy, just like the V3 Pro, so you get a lot of palm support if you're claw gripping this. And if you're looking to fingertip grip this, it is also possible because it's much smaller, so compared to the Viper V3 Pro, which really feels like the hump gets in the way, this feels a little bit more accessible for more people to fingertip grip. If you want to palm grip this mouse, I won't recommend it like most Viper shapes. As for size recommendations, if you're going to be doing a claw grip with the SH01 Pro, I would recommend hand sizes up to about 19.5 centimeter long hands. I feel like my hands are on the absolute limit of what can claw grip this mouse. I'm already using a very aggressive claw grip. Now, if you're fingertip gripping this mouse, I can see people with hands 17.5 centimeters long and above fingertip grip this comfortably because it's really narrow and it's quite compact, so it's very, very easy to fingertip grip, so that's good. Moving on, this mouse has a real nice coating, and the coating on here is basically identical to the Viper V3 Pro, maybe a bit more slippery, but it's a much smaller mouse, so it's a lot easier to grip onto, surprisingly. So you don't actually need to use grip tape with this, which is also really nice. Oh, and I forgot to mention this for the Deluxe M800 Ultra as well. It not only has a wireless connectivity, but these two mice also have Bluetooth connectivity as well, which these high-end gaming mice all don't have for some reason. But this allows it to basically be used with a laptop, an iPad if required, which gives it more versatility. The mice feet on this are pretty standard, though I find them a little slow, but the Viper V3 Pro mice feet are also very slow as well, so that is probably what they're going for. Battery life is really good on this, and as a result, is a very enjoyable experience game on. Performance-wise, at 8,000 Hz polling rate, this thing works as expected. Smooth, very consistent, and with a 3950 sensor, you're not going to have any problems with tracking here. As for the clicks, they use guano green and whites, which are mechanical unfortunately, but fortunately these are executed so darn well. There is no pre-travel, no post-travel, and basically zero sideways movement, which means it's going to be a better click feel than the Logitech G Pro Superlight 2 DeX Raid. All in all, I think the SH01 Pro is an excellent Razer Viper V3 Pro alternative, especially if you like the V3 Pro shape, but thought it was too big for your wallet and too big for your hand. You should definitely get the 8K version at only $68 US because it's still going to be a great value, and you're going to get extra performance, which you might as well do since the mouse is so much cheaper than the Viper it's competing with. Really nice shape, really nice coating, great execution. I really enjoy the SH01 Pro. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. Solid. In conclusion then, does Razer hate me for this video? Well, the answer is no. They probably won't watch this video, but they do hate me for making a video with an engineering sample a year or two back. That's another story for another time, but it's actually pretty funny. We can talk about it. That aside, these three budget Razer Viper alternatives are really interesting, and in particular, the latter two, the M800 Ultra and the ROM SH01 Pro, are really solid options with great specs, great performance, and great value for money. And with that, goodbye.